Hello, welcome to the BNB show. My name is Brandon, and this over here is Brendan of Seahawks Brendon Nelson. Good to have you back here on my end of things. Always best to have you back here, Brendan, after a win. How goes it?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on over here.
It's good to have you as always. And Brendan and me are going to be doing these shows twice a week throughout this year, both back and forth on his channel. But we'll be kind of dual streaming it this year, so you can catch it on both ends, however you might take it in. And we are going to be going over, of course, a little bit of this preseason action happening in a second, and then maybe a little just tiny look ahead to the Cowboys game. We'll be doing a preview show on that on Thursday. But it's been pretty quiet for Seahawks news at the moment, has it not, Brendan?
Yeah, not a lot going on, which you wouldn't necessarily expect a lot to go on. About the biggest thing we've gotten in the last week in terms of news would be what happened this morning with some of the PUP lists getting cleared up, which it's significant. I'm not going to downplay that. We've got also the promise of what is coming in the next couple days to kind of get excited about, but it's quiet right now, which is what you want for the most part.
It is indeed the, I guess, ideal here for the situation. You just don't want you got the Denver Broncos dealing with injury situations. You have other training camps where there's some worry about how the team's looking and what it's going to mean for the upcoming year. So it's good that kind of everything is steady as she goes a little bit. And I guess let's start off, at the top with this Vikings game. I know you've talked a lot about it on your channel. I have as well a bunch, but I do have just want to kind of pick your brain on where you're at with it. It was, to me, just a real complete team victory. I mean, if you want to kind of saturate all down to, or distill it all down to a bottom line, it felt like that to me. Was it the same for you?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair way to put it. We saw at least some elements of the team step up in all phases. Offensively, I think the main thing to get excited about, there were a few things that were good, but offensively, the thing that stands out is the depth at wide receiver. We have a pretty long list of receivers on this team that, not that all of them are good. I'm not going to say they're all good. If they were good, they would be on other teams starting, but they are frisky. They are fun. They can do some positive things. And this was a game where it could have been a problem because we didn't have Derek Young because of the injury, which he is now apparently just about to get back from. We lost Eskridge on the first play. Cody Thompson was out before the game started. And then right before halftime, we lost Cade Johnson, which fortunately looks like it wasn't nearly as bad as it seemed. But that could have been a problem, but it really wasn't. We actually got to see the depth we have at wide receiver with a guy like a Jake Bobo, who people were really excited about after this game, maybe more than anybody else. Matt Landers had a nice touchdown. Well, it was a nice catch. Okay. Oh,
it was a nice play.
Yeah, it was a nice offensive pass interference too, but whatever. He did that. Aesop Winston Jr. looks like the guy that Locke is actually the most comfortable throwing the ball to right now. JSN looked good for the little bit that he did play as well. He looked very promising to me. And it was a pretty nice showing from those guys. And I feel like most years we're kind of intrigued by the receiver depth on this team. And this year I feel like is no exception. So a lot of guys showed that at least an argument that they should make the team or make the practice squad. So offensively, that's kind of what stood out to me. Defensively, it was the pass rush. I thought we got a pretty good pass rush early, and then it got really good as the game went on. Guys who are fighting for their life on this roster, like Levi Bell and Jacob Sykes, played really well in that third and fourth quarter. So there was a lot of friskiness from the back end of the defensive line depth chart, but Boye Mafe, I thought, played good. I actually was impressed with Tyreek Smith, and Tyreek Smith has been a guy that I haven't really expected much from ever since he got here. And he looked good. And I think that there was some promise from Mike Morris as well. And he's a guy who could go one way or the other this season. So that stood out to me. And of course, we dominated special teams. We actually played really well on special teams, in my estimation, recovering the fumble, almost pinning them at the 1-inch line on that one play where I don't think anybody really did anything wrong. They just came really, really close to making a good play. We made our kicks. We made all the kicks that we had in this game, which always nice to see. And it was kind of a team effort, but those were the things that stand out to me.
Yeah, I think I feel very similar to you on what you saw from that. Obviously, I think the backs look pretty good. Charbonnet, real just in and out kind of appearance, but he looked good and laid some of the physical running style that I think you and I were hoping a little bit that he could provide this season, being a little bit of that USC vintage, Reggie White, Lendale White, Thunder and Lightning kind of combination back there that can really work well off of each other. We've got a historical basis to go off of some teams that have put their stable of backs together in that way. As long as they can stay healthy, Brendon. But in regards to the receivers, I will say, you do mention about us being excited about the receivers every year, and I think we certainly are. But the thing that makes this year to me a little bit different than if we look back the last 5 years and the receiving core and where it was, starting with a point where you're probably a Doug Baldwin, Tyler Lockett at that point, and then DK and you always kind of got the front heavy stuff, but then you were always looking to the back end of the other receiver roster, and you're going Malik Turner, Penny Hart, guys that when they went on the field, even Swain, I would offer, where you could just kind of see for those guys really when they got on the field, even after a couple snaps, this guy's not going to be able to get it done. This is not a guy with I put a prospect status on, or that he's got some real growth to his game where he's going to turn it on at some point. We're going to be like, ooh, another diamond in the rough. This is the year, though, where I feel like, and correct me if you feel differently, that these actual receivers are ones that I feel like a little bit more legitimate excitement for, always excitement, maybe a little more legitimate this year.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with this is we're not going to be able to keep all these guys. There are a lot of guys that I think that every Seahawks fan is going to have at least one receiver that doesn't make this team that they're really going to be like, oh man, I wish we could have kept that guy, because I think the top 4 spots on the active roster are locked up: Metcalf, Lockett, JSN, and Derek Young, because Derek Young does some unique things that no one else can do, like play fullback, and also his special teams value. I think his roster spot's safe.
Yeah. I agree.
So then at that point, maybe your 5th guy is Bobo. But then you're like, okay, well, what about Matt Landers, who has an exciting mix of raw talent? What about a guy like Aesop Winston Jr., who seems to have a degree of comfort out there that you're not seeing with some of these other guys? Apparently, Cody Thompson looks the best in training camp of these back-end receiver guys. Yeah. And then you've even got a guy, some people might like Tyjon Lindsey, who did actually make a catch last week. So Tyjon, you got to give him a little bit of credit here as well. And then you even have Eskridge, who has kind of removed himself from consideration because of the suspension, but you still have him. You still have Cade Johnson. It's somebody is going to get left out here for sure. That is at the very least intriguing. So it sucks, but that's not a bad spot to be, where like you've got too many guys to keep.
It's an issue where it sucks to lose the guy, but it is the place you'd like to ideally be all across the board with a positional group. And the place you go back to is 10 years ago when you had this problem, when what Brendon, at that point, I think just about 70% of the guys we cut ended up on active rosters or something, I believe in 2013 or 2014.
Yeah.
It's a bit of that sucks, but it's also the ideal, because it means that you're properly roster building. You're building a strong roster, and that doesn't just mean you're hitting home runs with the front end guys. You're also finding the guys at the back end of the draft or the undrafted rookies along with it. And that's a better position than to be in, to where you're just clinging on to just the valuable few, and the rest is just kind of fodder on the backside, or special teams players only in what they can bring. Encouraging sign, I think. And that's why I think that the receiver course just a little bit this year has a potential to be more explosive than ever, obviously with the 3 at the top, but then the depth here more than ever as well. And that's been a place, Brendon, if you remember, remember the Packers game on the road. I mean, you ended up in a place with Malik Turner being I believe your slot in that game. And that was a game I think Tyler was a little bit beaten up coming into it. He had that blood clot thing coming back from the Niners situation later in that season. So you can find yourself in a place here a lot. We don't talk about the receiving core being beat up a lot because Tyler and DK are such good soldiers about getting out there every single week, but you may need some of that depth. I agree with your way you look at it, though. Bobo's guy looking like he's going to lock that down, and boy, he looked so good. That release off of the touchdown throw, where he starts in and then goes out. I don't know if you saw the all 22 cut up of it, where you could really, because they didn't show it on the telecast, but he had this just crazy release, and that's something that can help you with the lack of speed, which is the thing that people really get caught up with on him.
Right. He finds ways to get open that are not necessarily traditional. Like, It doesn't make a lot of sense how it's happening, but it happens. And I'm not saying it's going to work against first stringers in the NFL, at least not immediately. But if it did, then he would be starting for another team, right? Like, he wouldn't be a UDFA if he had this 4.4 speed on top of everything else he has.
It is true. I do wonder, go back to that day he was tested, Brendan, that it was at a rainy period during California spring. They had like one of the rainiest springs in 50 years or something there. And he was trying to do that on a pro day without having the combine experience under his belt because he wasn't invited. I do kind of wonder if he goes out and runs more closer along the lines to a 4.65, 4.7 versus the 4.9, if that doesn't elevate him into being draftable in his stock at that point, because the tape was pretty good.
I mean, he ran like a 5-second 40, I think. So if we're saying he would have run 4.7, if not for the conditions and the circumstances, that's still pretty slow. Maybe it makes him draftable, but probably not by much.
Not by much. I'm not saying he would have been a high pick, but the guy that I've been going to and people have been mentioning in my chat a good deal, and the guy that I'm warming up to in my comp for him, I know it seems a little bit out of control at first, but give it a relook upon reviewing, and that's Joe Jurvicius. Joe Jurvicius ran a 4.65 coming out, which to me, I don't think that there's a game speed wise a huge difference when I watch guys from a Bobo to a Jurvicius on tape, and another guy that didn't necessarily have to win with speed. He could win with physicality. He could win by winning at the catch point. You know, he could be very crafty in what he was doing out there. And I see the same thing from this kid. And I think this comp took me a while to warm up to, but I am kind of starting to warm up to it, watching what he's doing out there. And again, going back, the tape was good with UCLA. We can get caught up on that speed and the testing numbers, but the bottom line is when the tape don't lie. And he was legitimately getting open with his route running and then making some tough catches out away from his body. So I definitely am getting a little bit more to a point of warming to him on that. I'm not saying he is Jurvicius, but I'm just saying that maybe that comp has a little bit more value than the initial kind of throw it away. You know, what do you think?
Okay, I mean, I can go with that. It's hard to find a comp for a guy like that, right? He's kind of unique. He's a big slot. Like, he's slow and uses his size, but he's also a slot receiver. Yeah, you don't see that often, so it's hard to find a comp in the first place. So I'm down with that.
We'll see what he can do. Either way, I think he is, Brendan, at least going to be, especially with that special teams play he made where the guy kind of sold on him, Brendan, because he knocked the ball back to allow for it to be pinned at the one. And then the guy coming up, who's the second guy on the scene, who's just kind of strolling on up, just doesn't check his feet and slides past that marker as he's catching the ball. So with that special team ability too, that appealed to Carroll. I think he's on while Eskridge is on that suspension/injury. It's a bit of both now, Brendan. You get a bit of both with Eskridge, you know, and just first preseason game.
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
It's not good. It's not good. It's because this was the time he needed to do something. This was his chance to leave at least a positive impression going into the suspension, and not going to happen now because, I mean, Carroll's basically already said he's not coming back till after the preseason. So
weird thing is that they are saying he is coming back. There was no sort of parsing or, you know, we'll see what happens kind of thing in the way he talked about it. Like, he needs to stay on his stuff. We'll see how it goes through here going forward. There was none of that. It was just kind of like when he'll be back after week 6. So the team there is no real competition here with Eskridge not making the roster, it would seem. He's done enough in their eyes to make that roster. That's just not going to happen.
Well, the thing is, you don't even have to put him on the roster for those first 6 games because he'll be suspended. So you get to kind of keep him for free. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
I wonder if when he comes time to activate him, if they then decide, you know what, we just can't give this roster spot to Eskridge. We need to keep Bobo because he's doing good stuff, or we need to keep Cade Johnson because he's doing, or whoever.
Right. No, that's a good point. Or where's the injury situation with our receiving core at that time? You know, could we use another body injected into the ranks because we sustained an injury? It doesn't hurt to have that flexibility, to your point on that. And I can understand where they're coming. I wouldn't you got, like you said, the free, you get the, a quarter of his salary or a third of his salary basically is gone off the books this year that you do save.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, because they don't get paid for the time where they're suspended. So that chunk returns back to the team and it's not a huge chunk, but hey, man, every little bit, as we know, you know, every little bit counts. So
no, that matters. That matters. He's not on a minimum contract. He's making a little bit more than that. That matters.
Yeah. So it's a little bit of an upshot when a guy does get suspended, is you get a little bit of the coin back for whatever it may be. It's not that I want him suspended, but that one's a good part. Another guy I want to talk about, I released a video today on him and doing a little bit of a double back around to the All-22 and then looking at the PFF stuff. Devin Bush, man. I was very impressed by what I saw from him on a kind of a variety of different levels from his game. It's only 29 snaps. Granted, I'm not trying to make too much of this. This is all stuff that's more about, like with Bobo. I think you would say the same thing. I'd hope we'd have to tell you guys in the chat. You know this, but this is also with a view of, this is an initial game. We're not taking any sort of final view on this. This is just sort of initial impressions off a game, and let's see what they can do through the rest of the preseason. But Bush was very impressive coming out of this game, I thought. And there's a question within this, but let me find first off where you stood with Bush. Were you more May than I am? Or you just kind of, no, he's good, but I need to see way more?
He played a good game. And I'm actually pretty intrigued by how this is going to go, because he's not going to have to play every snap in the regular season. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. He is going to be our second inside linebacker behind Wagner. And we're going to run a lot of 3-3-5. That means he's not on the field on 3-3-5. Mm-hmm. So he's going to play probably about as much as Cody Barton played last year, which is like maybe 60 to 65%. So if that's the case, and I do think it is going to be the case, I think you're going to see quite a bit of 3-3-5. Then you don't need him to be an every down killer. You need him to you just need him to have a big impact across that smaller subset of plays. And I think he can do it. You can see the things that made him a top 10 pick. Like, don't forget, this is not a Bobo situation where Bobo was a UDFA because he does have limitations to his game. Devin Bush is one of the fastest inside linebackers ever. And I know he got hurt. I know that he may not be the fastest anymore because of the injury. I get that. Mm-hmm. But he was one of the fastest inside linebackers ever. And he is bringing a lot of really positive things to the table here. And you see those things in a game like this. I think he made a lot of splash plays in this game. I was very impressed with him. So I'm actually really excited for this, knowing that we don't need him to be a superstar. We just need him to be good. And I think what's going to happen here, because, of course, Jordan Brooks has gotten activated now, is Bush is going to get to be the starter for the first several weeks while Brooks works his way back. And then we're going to make a call at some point when Brooks is 100% healthy. Has Bush done enough to keep that starting spot? And I think that he will. I actually do think this is going to work out well. I'm excited for this one.
Well, you touched on the part of the question I was going to ask next of you, which is the old, me, I like to throw you scenarios. And so you have Bush through the first 6 weeks, whatever they would choose to do with Brooks to give him maybe a little bit of extra time, or 3 weeks, whatever it be. But Bush goes out there and he gives you play that would be equivalent to, 65 on a PFF league average. But he's solid all across the board in his basic, measurements. He's good in coverage, good against the run, good in the tackler. And then you have the potential of being Brooks back, who might offer you a little bit of a marginal improvement by the coach's outlook in his ability to stop the run. Maybe more of a pure hitter, but we did see Bush could bring some wood. He definitely puts a couple of 2x4s on that shoulder when he's walking down that field. But your answer was kind of there, I guess, in what you just said, in that you would be saying, hey, no, I'll go to Bush. I know I have the known quantity of what I get from Jordan Brooks. I know that there's going to be that, it's the elephant in the room here, right? It's the coverage stuff with Brooks, man. You know what I mean? And that's the thing I'm really kind of leading here. So you would go to Bush at that point.
I mean, if Brooks was 100%, like the ACL injury didn't happen, I would probably go with Brooks. But he's not going to be 100% this year. He'll be able to play. But I think we all know that injuries like that, there's a process of getting back to where you were that isn't going to solve itself in 7.5 months. I mean, we're already amazed that he's actually physically able to play football now after 7.5 months, when we were told the timetable was a year. But just because he can play doesn't mean he'll be able to play at his full capacity. So I feel like what we're going to get out of Bush this year in that role is going to be better than what a hobbled, less than 100% Brooks is going to give. I mean, I'm not the biggest Brooks fan in the world, of course, but I don't think he's a bad player. I think he's bad in some areas, but I was looking at the PFF run defense metrics. He is actually quite good in pretty much every run defense metric they have. Mm-hmm. So there are some areas where he is good, but this year, coming off the ACL, I don't think we're going to see the better parts of him necessarily,
Well, and I agree with you on that. It's the old, it's the old assessment I came back to when I was watching draft night, my breakdown of him. And it's the question I posed on the draft night on my stream, Brendan. And it's the same question I pose now. It's, what is not just in what you pay this guy, right? But now it's about playing time. What is the value of a run stuffing only middle linebacker in the NFL? A guy who's, and I mean that both for the good and the bad of it, being that he can hit, he can tackle, he's sideline to sideline, rangy as hell. But that's the player he is. When you flip side to the other over, and it's not merely that he's kind of like somewhat, lukewarm in coverage. It's that he's really, 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 really struggled throughout in zone coverage, especially. And that's what Seattle does with their linebackers. You're usually spot dropping. It's very rare you're in man. That's the irony here, is that Seattle could fix this a little bit with Brooks. He's good with man coverage situations. They're just not in man coverage situations very often. So he's not able to take advantage of that talent. So I come back to that again going, it's not merely with him, Brendon, of being, well, he's somewhat, little titch below league average. He's been I'm trying to find the word to not, I'm trying to avoid the word miserable here, but it's been that, has it not? Am I off on that with the coverage? I mean, it's been that bad.
2 years ago, there were 2 players in the NFL, according to, I think it was PFF, that gave up more than 1,000 yards in coverage. It was Trayvon Diggs and Jordan Brooks. So Trayvon Diggs is making 11 interceptions to offset that. Brooks is not. So I think the proof is kind of in the pudding.
Yeah. And I have just my only concern with this is that the worry is if he does come back and you've had Bush kind of playing well, that hopefully the coaches have a reasonably short hook for the situation if they're seeing still those coverage issues come up, or put Brooks in the position to succeed, which is a little bit better to succeed, which would be more of the man stuff, which they could do with Brendon if they're going to indeed run more of the pressure-based stuff, because pressure and man coverage are hand into glove. And they go together really, really well. And so if you could start to ask him to do that stuff, I think he could be pretty good with that. But it'll be something, I think, just to monitor for the season with that triumphant that you have there of those middle linebackers, and they're all kind of vying for 2 positions. And we know Bobby ain't going nowhere. Right. So good you mentioned on Tyreek Smith. He got dinged a little bit by PFF in this grade, but I actually thought to the eye test, he was active, twitchy. He seemed to have some pretty strong hands where he could throw the tackle's body off him a little bit at times.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I looked at the PFF grades for the whole Seahawks Vikings game. I thought they were awful. I think our highest graded offensive linemen were Stone Forsythe and Phil Haynes, which is the exact opposite of what I saw. I think they were maybe our 2 worst players on the whole team. Those rankings, to me, I feel like they just had to. I don't know what they were seeing, but I looked at those PFF grades and I was like, no way, nuh-uh.
They were especially brutal on the quarterbacks too. I mean, they both Allers and Drew Lock, they had somewhere, I think, the mid 40s grades or something. So it was a little bit of an oddly graded game.
Yeah, that made me want to unsub to PFF Plus.
Well, hopefully they can keep it together. I will say there were some parts of the grade that added up to me where there was the good part of it where you say, okay, that guy, the running back, or Bush as being your best highly rated PFF defender in this game, that added up certainly. But there was a couple ones on this one where you're going, everybody pass blocked well, but nobody ran blocked well in the game for us, I think.
Yeah. Like they gave Anthony Bradford a 4, which, I mean, I know he had bad moments. I'm not saying it was all great, but that's insulting. That's like saying he can't put his pants on without falling over. I can't brush my teeth without stabbing my eye out.
It felt punitive. It definitely felt like somebody was a little angry at Anthony Bradford. Like, maybe they got a cousin whose sister dated him down there in LSU or something, or, I don't know. Cause that was a little like 4. Oh man. I don't see that grade very often. That one does not come up much.
That's like when your teacher at school gives you a Z. It's not a grade. It's sarcasm.
Yeah, I know. Exactly. Why not 0.5 at that point? Just because you guys are trying to have a laugh, obviously. Yeah. And, and he wasn't great. And the pass protection stuff with him is true, where that's the struggle with him. That's the thing we had to worry about with him as much as anything. You knew he was going to be a little bit rough and raw. So, Haynes not doing great in this game wouldn't have been the biggest surprise for where we knew where he was at kind of coming out. And one interesting part I will say with the grade, though, is that you did see Phil Haynes, best pass blocking offensive lineman in this game, more allotted to his natural left guard position, Brendon.
I don't know. I'd have to rewatch that game. I thought that he and Forsythe were like the bottleneck for the whole offense. I thought everyone else on offense was playing pretty well, pretty good. And those 2 guys were wrecking a lot of plays because they're just not good enough. So,
well, they offer nothing in the run game. Neither guy's giving you anything in the run game. I mean, that's kind of that's the flip of it, is that, but usually the left guard, you don't normally need that guy. I mean, it's nice to have, you can, but you want more of that guy at the pass. But that's where we get back to that Damian Lewis thing. Damian Lewis, right guard, Phil Haynes left guard. As I come back and go, you'll have your road grader than a right guard. You got a guy named Lucas and him together will be that strong side. You're going to run most of your plays strong side anyway. But I'll agree with you on that. The running game wasn't good with them, both of those guys. But it's not a shock. Neither of them are going to be good in that. That's just not it's really not their games. And it won't ever, kind of be.
Yeah, and for Forsyth, it's fine because he's a backup. But Haynes, I mean, we might have to play the game that a lot of people are wanting, where we move Brown to right guard and then we start Oluwatimi. Like, that may happen if we feel like Phil Haynes isn't cutting it, which after that preseason game, I wouldn't blame them for thinking that.
Well, especially too with Bradford not necessarily looking ready to go either at that other side.
I would never expect him to be ready. He's played like 17 games in college.
Totally. But no, you would have maybe been shocked here. And some people were hopeful, can this guy slide in day one? It's like, well, no, now that's not an option. So we have to look to the other options here at play. And I think it'll probably potentially go like you say, especially if the battle between Brown and Oluwatimi is really, really close, where there's not much more to be gained by throwing Brown out there versus Olu. So put your best offensive line together at that point potentially and let it ride. I'm okay with that though. As long as it's better than last season and keeps improving, I'm good with it. I'm not expecting them to dominate this year with this group necessarily, but really good. Yeah. I will say too, Brendan, we are leaning a little bit more with having an offensive line you could potentially be setting up here that is more of a pass protecting based offensive line. If Olu eventually transitions into being the starting center, and if Haynes does end up still holding down right guard because his coaching staff just happens to like him, and acknowledging last year that Damian Lewis did his best stuff in pass protection rather than his traditional run blocking stuff, and acknowledging Charles Cross is better as a pass blocker than a run blocker, and Lucas is pretty good overall, but still better as a pass blocker. That's the way you set that line up. You kind of then have to lean a little bit into the passing attack, don't you?
I mean, you drafted JSN, right? I feel like that's kind of a pivotal moment where you're saying we drafted JSN because we're going to go 3 wide a lot, and if we're going to go 3 wide a lot, we're going to pass a lot. So I feel like that line has already been crossed a little bit.
Yeah, I do agree. And I think that if they lean into it, I think it's okay because that's what you built for this personnel to be able to handle. We're still going to run the ball. It's not that we just bail on running, but maybe the days of being 51-49 are probably in the rearview mirror on that, Brendan.
We were pretty pass happy last year, right?
Oh, insanely pass happy, as big as we've ever been. So I think they were already going that way. That was a bit of a necessity game there, but I think this is also like that. The line can pass protect well. This line can hold up in pass protection. Everybody can do their job with that, but then that's going to make Carroll have to go outside of that a little bit. He did it last year, which is part of why we give Carroll credit so much, because he has changed a little bit of his ways and leaning towards the strength of his personnel, especially being offensive heavy and then being willing to pass and throw. So stay in. Let's see if they stay into it, man. Let's have Geno for 5,000 yards this year, just peppering that ball all over the field, man. Peppering it, I tell you. Concierge with Nolan. Thank you for the $5 donation. I appreciate it, Nolan. He says Bobo can be the football equivalent to Jamie Moyer. 68-mile-an-hour fastball and still a game wrecker. Yeah, Jamie was a fun guy to pitch. I was a lefty like that when I was pitching Brendan as a baseball player, so I had to be super crafty because I didn't have overpowering stuff. So you just appreciated the guy that could just change speeds, arm angles. He'd throw the sink at you as far as every pitch in the game. But man, that guy was good for us.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
And Bobo can
still be pitching today.
Probably could be, man. He was never reliant, and he pitched to like 48 or something, man. He did go till there's probably probably a low-key strong argument to be made for Moyer to get into the Hall. If you look at his just longevity stats, he never dominant, but that's another argument for another day. Can Bobo be a guy like that? Yeah. Can you be a crafty guy as a wide receiver? There's crafty guys throughout this league that, even a DeAndre Hopkins, that's not a fast guy. This guy, a crafty, great route runner, had a little bit of natural talent with probably some of his jumping ability. And when he was younger, I think yards after the catch. Who's the guy over there with the Chargers for years who's been really productive for them?
Keenan Allen?
Keenan Allen. I think he was, a 4th, 5th round guy coming out.
Or was that Mike Williams? One of the two.
No. Mike Williams is the 1st rounder, but Keenan was the 4th, 5th rounder, route runner guy. That's just
sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. He's going to grind out. So there is kind of guys in this league that have done this and have gone this path. Well, I mentioned Joe Jurvicius is a guy that we got. That was another guy that didn't hit a lot of places early. He's playing a little bit for the Eagles, but always kind of stacked behind the depth chart. Got to us, and we didn't sign him for a big deal, bringing him in. He wasn't looked at as to be the number 1 receiver. We had some injuries that year at receiver, and so he became the guy and then had this great year, and it shocked everybody. But
I think he was on the Tampa Bay team that won the Super Bowl. With Brad Johnson.
He was on the
right?
Tampa Bay team too. Yep. He bounced around. He was all over those West Coast offenses. So he went Eagles, Tampa Bay, Seattle, Holmgren, Gruden, and Reed at the time over there with the Eagles. So
I think he played in 3 Super Bowls. I'm trying to remember where the third one was.
Did he play? He might have gone. It might have been at the Eagles when they went against the Patriots.
Maybe.
When they lost to the Patriots, he might have been the guy still on that roster at that time. I think that's correct. But absolutely, Bobo can be that guy, and I think people get caught up a lot in the speed, and I get it. I understand, but there's been so many receivers come through this league that have been fine without having the top end speed, and we got to remember that. Even having one here in Steve Largent. Steve Largent was sneaky fast, but he wasn't fast. Jerry Rice was not fast. He was same thing, kind of sneaky fast. But Rice was a 4.6 guy coming out, which even back in the day was looked at as slow. But thank you, Nolan. I like your prediction on that, and I hope you're right, man. We're gonna need it. It's gonna help us for depth. Speaking about depth, what do you make about the running back and what his day was like? Our own little Austin Ekeler,
Kobach.
They call him Kobach. He's a new detective on the scene. He's here to solve the Seahawks running game issues.
He's got to make the practice squad at this point, right? At the very least.
Oh, he's got to
get him on there. I really like that wheel route we ran with him. That was nice. That kind of got me excited. That's the kind of stuff we got to do when the season starts. But he played a good game.
It's a great insight there too, by the way, because of how infrequently at times in the years we've kind of attacked to the flat and running that kind of route where it's not just a flat route, but a little bit of that wheel route, like you say, and you're rolling over the top. Boy, that thing's going to be wide open and quick because teams are going to be racked into other stuff on the field. At that point, it was I did love that play call from him, and it also looked so purposeful to attack with it, not just have it be Brendon where you're going 1 read here, 2 read here, 3 read, and then I get back over to the wheel on the 4. It was almost like it went 1 to the wheel and then back to others if it was going to go through the other reads. But that was impressive. But yeah, I think he's got to be on this back end. And what's nice about this, Brendon, is we probably are going to have to call upon this guy. This is where you spend a little bit more time on your typical 5th running back, your practice squad running back than you would normally do so. As we're going to, if recent history holds true, we're probably going to have to be giving this guy some carries, some touches at some point throughout the course of this season.
Yeah, at the very least, he's going to be on the active roster at some point, right? Like maybe he gets called up and he just plays on special teams. But he's going to have to be there, and he's going to have to be ready. He's going to have to be ready because it could come at any time. Like last year, there were guys who started not on the roster, like Tony Jones, who did eventually end up playing a non-trivial role in this offense. So, yeah, I would say so, and I'm pretty okay with that. I wasn't sure about Kobach. I thought maybe we were going to try to go find someone with a little more gravitas, like a Marlon Mack, but now his career is basically over. He tore his ACL again. I thought it was going to be someone like that, but at this point, I think I'm feeling pretty okay about it being.
I read Achilles.
Achilles, even worse, actually.
Yeah, the guy's had some brutal injury luck, man.
Yeah, so I'm feeling pretty good about Kobach at this point. Like it was kind of like the Holton Allers thing, where I really felt like we need a practice squad quarterback. This isn't it. Still kind of feel that way, honestly. But with Kobach, he kind of won me over.
He did me too. And I like the full skill set that he brings. So if you maybe need to call upon him at some point and not have him be the full on running back A for a couple given game stretch if guys go down to injury, but have him come in and be a 3rd down back. If you've got to then move into one of your other McIntosh or Charbonnet into the number 1 role, or, if Dallas is out then too, as can inevitably happen, you've got that then to call upon, which is nice for that 3rd down back role to maybe not miss a beat if he can kind of show off those same skills, because he was good in both elements as a runner and as a pass catcher in this particular one. I don't know. Was there any other things that stood out to this game? Jarek Reed, we got to give him a little bit of his flowers here a bit.
Him and Sutherland were kind of all over the place, huh?
They were, man. I really felt like, and Reed in particular to me, it seemed like he was in on every play, had his nose on everywhere. He's seemed to be that kind of player with it. You saw his speed that showed up. This isn't the guy in the 6th round you're getting, Brendon, who doesn't have explosiveness, quickness, speed, the ability to do it from a, physical standpoint out there. At least I know he's maybe not a little undersized from a size standpoint, but he's definitely got, NFL ability out there to be a pretty rangy safety if you ask him to do that stuff. And so nice to see this kid come in and show out in his first game, I thought, as he was all over the field doing a variety of different cool things, including hitting. We're gonna have to talk about the hitting in this game at some point. Did my eyes betray me, Brendan? Did my eyes betray me? Were we hitting a little more in this game, or am I just getting too overhyped here? And I thought I was seeing a little bit more smacking and mouths.
Well, you had the Reed, you had the Devin Bush play on special teams,
and
you had the Kobe Bryant play where he came up from safety.
And you had the Bush play to
stand out,
and the Bush play on the sidelines, where Bush got that guy on the sidelines and knocked him out with a nice little thump. I got it on the all 22. It's a great angle where he comes through and gives him a good little here you go, Rosie.
Yeah. And it makes sense, right? He's building a lot of acceleration when he slams into somebody because he is so fast. So seemed like there was a pretty good amount of hitting out there. There was 2 personal foul penalties that got picked up. It seems like what the refs are trying to do this year, we'll see if it carries into the regular season, is throw the flag on everything and then talk about it and pick it up a pretty good percentage of the time.
Yeah.
And that's probably the best way they can do it. So that if they do that, I'm actually, I like that. I know it'll make the game take a little bit longer, but I think that's for the best.
Get the call right. I'm okay with it being I'm okay with them having the huddle up on stuff and getting the call right. As long as they come away and they get it right, then don't come up with a huddle and then you still mess this stupid thing up. But they always are also, to your point, in that a little over officiating in the preseason to try to kind of set a tone, to get all those people that play into the gray area of the rules to, okay, back it up. This is what it's going to really be like. And then they get to the regular season and it usually starts to, dial back a little bit. It doesn't carry on through in that same way. So we'll see if it holds up. But it was good. I did think we were kind of hitting a little more than we have in recent years, coming in with a little bit more of the bad intentions, if you will, Brendan. And it's just one game, but it's something to track and monitor, because if they can continue to show that throughout the preseason, and if that can now become a part of the identity of this team, this is a big point to me, Brendan, because Coach Carroll teams are always going to be rallied to the ball type defenses, in that there's such a preference towards keeping the big play limited that you're always going back and then kind of rallying up in general terms in your kind of coverages. So you need guys, when they do rally up, who aren't just kind of bringing a guy to the ground after he's got a 7-yard gain, but instead, like our LOB days, making a guy pay the price for that 7-yard gain. And that's when you go back and watch the old games of our guys, as talented and as good as they were, Brendan, from the KJ Wrights to the Cam Chancellors to the Richard Shermans to the Earl Thomas to the Bobby, everybody was hitting. Everybody was going to hit whoever made that catch and make them pay that price. And this defense was doing a little bit of that this past week, which got me really, really excited.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't want a dirty player. I don't, but
no,
you've got to have that element to it.
Yeah. It's, if you're going to play this kind of defense, that's the way it is. It's that we do this in the first quarter, we do this in the second quarter, we do the third, and then by the fourth quarter, when you're going over for that catch over the middle that you caught in the first quarter, no problem. I'm going to go get this nice gain, my little 8 yards, help out and somebody hits you a couple times doing that, and you go, alligator arms. I'm not going to go. I don't want to do that. I don't want any more of those hits. That hurts. My chest still hurts after last one. I can feel my rib. And that's what that causes. And you can kind of get that over the course of a game if you play this style, but you got to be able to play it. And you got to have the people on the field that can play it. And I'd argue, Brendan, if you look his last 5-6 years, we've had not as many guys. You've had like 1 or 2 here or there. And then the rest of guys are just kind of drag them down, kind of, defenders at times, I'll get them down, eventually. But I ain't going to do much about it. I ain't going to be violent about it,
Mm-hmm.
Any other last thoughts from you from this game? As far as I think we covered pretty good on this.
Well, there would be some stuff in the not so positive, I think, that we should go over. Some of the things that maybe weren't so good. I already talked about Forsyth and Haynes. I thought they both played pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly, I wasn't that impressed with the pass protection from those guys either. I know PFF graded them well, but I didn't love what I saw there. To me, actually, pretty much everyone on the offense played fine except for those two, and those two guys were killing a lot of plays. So that's not great. Defensively, Radigan looks cooked to me. He can't change direction very well. I know he had a lot of tackles, but I wasn't feeling Radigan at all.
Yeah.
And BBK is completely cooked too. He runs with a limp almost. I think that unfortunately the party's over with BBK, which I don't enjoy saying, but I believe it is probably the case. And that would mostly be it. I was pretty happy with everything else. That was about all that stood out to me in the negative.
Yeah, I think that's fair there. I saw the same thing from you that you did with Radigan. He was certainly early on. The Vikings were going after him in coverage, and he was just there was that like Brooks-like lack of feel to his zone drops where it's I'm dropping, but I don't know of anybody coming through or leaving, and I'm just dropping. I'm just here at my spot, and then it's like, do more, head on this, like look to what's going on, just kind of staring at the quarterback going, okay, let's just don't throw to me, please. It's almost like you can feel his head saying that in that moment. Yeah, I think that was about as far as it on it. I was hoping to see a little bit more from Miles Adams. I thought he got shut down a lot in pass rush. And that's a guy that I'm hoping can kind of step forward this year, who's a little bit like the Mike Jackson on the interior of the defensive line, a guy maybe getting better and better and better. He's not a rookie anymore. He's on a second year guy. He's had a couple years in the league now to kind of develop himself. A guy I'm looking to start to show out this preseason a little bit more, Brendon, because I like him to be a part of this rotation. Not a head dog, just kind of a part of the rotation, mixed in there, a little bit. Well, let's get on to a little bit of some good news. As you said, we've got some injury dominoes, I would call it, good dominoes, about to fall in a direction, it would seem like, in the way that Coach Carroll describes it, of one player coming back, next player coming back, next player coming back, next player coming back. And Jordan Brooks appears to be that guy coming back first and foremost. So he is due to be back 8 months after the injury. I know we talked a little bit about that. It does sound like we have Jamal Adams as well. Very close, do we not?
Yeah, Corbin Smith says he believes it'll be a matter of days before he comes off, because basically those two guys were kind of working out together and they were rehabbing together, and it feels like that whole process is kind of together. So he believes that Adams will be off the PUP very soon. Now, off the PUP doesn't mean I can play football quite yet. So don't be shocked if both those guys don't play immediately. I would like to see a situation where both those guys are active for week 1, but maybe they're not starting. That way, if you need them, you can put them out there, but you're not putting the whole world on them to play a great game like right now at the NFL level. I'm hoping for that, but don't be shocked if they miss the first few weeks of the season.
To me, it feels kind of smart to have the first few weeks of the season in a Bayou time kind of situation. And let me see if I can talk you into this a bit, Brendon, with this. Number one, let's acknowledge first, it's great that we're hearing that Jamal's days away, because there's a worry out there that the guy's not even close, and that, they're just trying to do we'll give him one more year because it didn't make sense to cut the money on the dead money front of this. So let's just try to ride it out no matter what may happen. But we're kind of feeling reticent right now because he's still not back and ready. But here he is now, a couple days away. Am I right to think then that means is that this is not a guy that we're looking at week 6? We got to wait for him, and then he'll be back, and he's just on basically half a leg, like you just talked about with Burke Irvin, where he's just dragging a leg along, and that they would have activated him at this point if that was the case. Do you think they would have done that?
Probably not. No, you wouldn't think so. I mean, remember, BBK was off the team, and we brought him back because we needed somebody, and we were like, let's see what he's got. That's different from the Adams situation, where he's actually like a big part of whether or not this team is successful or not this year.
Agreed. And that's where I just think with this one, they could have been afforded having Julian Love here, moving a little bit of Kobe Bryant around, having some built-in help there at safety with that. They could have taken the time on this if it was with PUP to just let him sit through into week 6, keep him on the PUP. And then the key to this one for me, Brendon, is he doesn't count as an active roster spot. I know we're at the 90-man roster thing, so that when you do bring Jamal back, it's at that point. But you're probably not going to put him on the active roster now and get down to cut down day and then slide him back on the PUP. He may be inactive on game day, but he'll still at least be on the roster. And that to me is just an indication that the coaching staff feels relatively optimistic as we're trying to read into where Jamal is at and how he's doing. That speaks to me that they think that this is a guy that's, if not back by week 1, Brendon, certainly within the first couple of weeks. And they feel confident so to do that. And this is a team, coach. Let's remember this, Brendon. This is a team that with a guy like Rashad Penny, for instance, wasn't in a rush to get that guy back on an active status after the ACL. They would give him the weeks into the season. And it feels like, from my standpoint, when they've had these kind of injuries in the past, they've been willing to then go, we'll just go through the first 5, 6, 7 weeks here, and then we'll get him back in because this is This is such such a major injury. So maybe I could be reading a little bit too deeply in this, Brendon, but it does seem like they're more confident in him being back to capabilities to come out and have impact on the field than some of the folks out there in Seahawks fans.
Yeah, and also let's keep in mind that if we don't have them, we're pretty well equipped to live with that for a few weeks because of Kobe Bryant, because of Julian Love. So if it's not like we would hurry them out there because, oh crap, we need this because our backup is some UDFA who runs a 6-second 40 time.
Right.
No, we actually have credible guys.
Yeah. You don't have Radigan out there saying you got a Devin Bush out of there if you're waiting on Brooks. And you mentioned about Julian Love in the same way. So I think especially that Rams game to me, Brendan, I could take one game off the tread off two guys coming back off major injury. I got this team at home on opening week. McVay is crafty as hell. Stafford, Donald, and Cooper Kupp can beat you almost all on their own. I'll acknowledge that. I'm not trying to be overconfident. But if there was one maybe game that I'd be a little overconfident in an opening game of the season, when I know all my guys are going to be hyped up to hell, the crowd's going to be hyped up to hell, that might be one that I might be willing to go. I'll give it an extra week on that and make sure they have one less game on their bodies this year.
I mean, every team has a few killers, right? Like every team out there has at least a few guys that could beat you. The difference is the Rams have no depth, and those other teams mostly do. So
that is the other side of it. And young guys starting their first game across the board in that. I mean, how many rookies will be starting for them? We had 6 last year. I think the Rams could easily have, 6 or 7 probably on their side. They're starting come week 1 as well. And that's hard to do. That's not easy. So we'll see if they give him the extra time on that, but it's so encouraging to hear Adams is back because this kind of injury, it's caused some players to not even be able to come back in their career, period.
Yeah.
And so hopefully he can come back and be, near or close to what he was prior. What's good here about this, Brendan, is he did have it suffered in the first week last year of the season. So he has had a little bit of that extra time versus even Jordan Brooks with a 7.5 month timeline. I guess he's got a bio and engineered cartilage there in the knee or something because they got him back fast. He must have went to Sweden for some of that cryogenistic, whatever they call that thing. Cryothesis genestic is whatever they call it, where they inject it with stem cells.
Yeah, only legal in Europe.
Only legal in Europe and Brazil. Washington FizQuest, thank you for the $2 donation. I do appreciate you, man. It says, just looked it up. Moyer played to 49 years of age. Hell yeah, Jamie. 269 and 209. So there you go. Those are Hall of Fame numbers right there.
Yeah. Baseball Hall of Fame's harder though. They make it hard.
Yeah. He's not getting in, I don't think.
Roger Maris never made the Hall of Fame. He had the home run record forever. Single season home run record forever. You got some guys who won multiple MVPs, I think, who haven't gotten in. It's tough.
It is. It's not like the other sports. Basketball seems like kind of the easiest. Football's kind of gotten easier over recent years, it seems like.
Yeah.
But Jamie's probably not going in, but I mean, that was a great trade for us, and he came in and was able to just be so steady in that rotation. I think he even played great in the playoffs too. When he was in the playoffs, a good playoff pitcher on top of it. So shout out to Jamie Moyer, man. Thank you, though. Appreciate the dono. Wishing you FizQuest. Hope you're having a good night, man. Fat Daddy Stacks in the house says, one thing I noticed from the preseason game was the number of defenders running to the play. Don't remember seeing that in a while.
Maddie F Brown did a tweet thread, I think it was last night, where he broke down some of the plays from that preseason game. And what he basically boiled down to, you guys should all go look at his thread, by the way, because it breaks down plays in very minute detail. But what he said was, to make a long story short, the defense this year is better equipped to stop the run because they've made schematic changes about where the run support comes from. It's coming from many more places, and it's much more active than it was last year. So some people are wondering, how are we going to stop the run any better than last year because this personnel is not so good? Sometimes it's not about the personnel. Sometimes it's also about how you play run defense. So that would make sense if you're seeing that, and that would mean that it's working.
Yeah, there's so many variety of ways to, not varieties, but there's a couple of different ways to win in the run game like you talk about. And I've been thinking for a while, as we've discussed, how this could go on from a creative fashion rather than thinking about it traditionally of it's got to be defensive lineman based. We need Jalen Carter down there, and we need all these linemen down there to wreck shop. Rather than thinking about it in that fashion, think about it more, I'm thinking here, which is that in simple terms, you're bringing down heavy boxes. You're committing to having guys on the edge at corner playing a little more press looks, which if I'm playing in a press look, I can come off of that press look and play down in the run game easier than if I'm playing 10 yards off coverage every snap. And I got to rally up 10 yards and then find an angle to the ball. Not to mention I've given that receiver a pathway to blocking me at that point a little bit easier. So there's a lot of things I think you can do to kind of help yourself out. And it seems like that I saw that too, to my eyes, that there just was a more of a dedication to bringing guys down and help out down there, not just saying these guys down the line got to handle their business. And that's the way you can do this, especially with this team and the way it's built. A Jamal Adams who's built to be down by the box. A Bobby Wagner built to probably be at his best coming downhill as well. Eventually, when we get back in Spoon into the slot, he can help out down there too with that stuff. So you've got some guys that can I think they can be a little more creative, Brendan, is what I'm saying. Don't you think they can solve this in being creative in their approach? That it doesn't mean they're going to be dominant stopping the run, but it does mean that they can stop it from being a bleeding part of the team like it was last year.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, partially because it can't get worse, right? It was so near the bottom of the league last year. It has to get better. But yeah.
It also gets better from concentrate on like they seem to be.
Yeah. I mean, Carroll probably cares more about stopping the run than the average coach in the league by a pretty good margin. I think there are some coaches out there that don't really care about it, and they're like, we'll live with it and we'll find ways to win anyway. Carroll's probably not one of them. So, it hurt him last year when we couldn't stop the run at all.
Oh, it had to. I mean, it hurts him seeing his defense failing, and then that on top of it. The only thing would have made worse is just giving up big plays over the top continuously, and he probably would have just about had a heart attack out there on the field. So this is the part that's good to see in this first game. The rally to the ball. The defense is how this thing is built. You have pressure-based defenses, so people might go, well, aren't all defenses rallied to the ball? No. If I have a 3-4 attacking Rex Ryan defense that's going to bring cover zero blitzes, and that quarterback gets it outside to a receiver on a hot route, that corner's on an island to go make that tackle. There ain't no rallying to no ball at that point. If you're trying to send defenders to one side of the field and you attack the other side of the defender, there's no real route. Those defenders are out of the play at that point. I mean, this is why coaches like Carroll play to more of the soft coverages to protect stuff like that from happening. But you do need the players to react and close really quickly on what they're seeing out there in space, or else you can get dink and dunk to death a little bit. You can have a team just kind of slowly cut you throughout the game and without really ever, sticking the blade fully in, so to speak. And this is how you improve this defense. Rally and then come with the bad intentions like the defense did back 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. Thank you though, Fat Daddy. Appreciate that $5 donation. Very kind of you. David Pugh in the house. Thank you, David, for the $5 as well. Says on a scale of 1 to 10, how worried are you all about Spoon? Just with his time missed and him likely having to wait till week 1. I'm not worried personally.
Well, big picture, I'm not worried at all. Big picture, this is whatever. In terms of what he's going to do his rookie year, I'm actually pretty concerned now because these reps are important for these guys. I believe that. I think that these guys and their ability to effectively play in this rookie season depend heavily on your training camp reps and your preseason reps. And now he's not getting a lot of those. So I still think he'll positively contribute this year, but this is really going to hurt his ability to start week 1. This is going to hurt his ability to be a slot and outside corner in year 1, just because he's missing these reps. So I do think it matters. And that's not me, of course, not blaming the player. I'm not mad at the player. It's not like it's his fault that he got hurt. But I do think this does change things for how we have to look at his rookie year.
Yeah, agreed. Much like you look at the guy on the other side of the angle on this being Jackson Smith-Njigba, who has been healthy throughout minicamp, throughout training camp, who's out there repping every day, and who you and I both expect to have a fair, decent amount of impact day 1, game 1, let's go. And I do think that, there comes a point where this does hamper you in a way that sets you a little bit behind the 8 ball. We've seen, me and Brendan have been at this for many years and seen numerous rookies who've come in with high expectations who just get dinged up, who are already behind things as far as being a rookie and trying to make it work from that standpoint. But then they're dealing with an injury on top of it, and they just can't seem to find much of an impact throughout the whole course of the year. And the coach ends up saying, last year he was just dealing with something, and now we're going to get him free to clear that. And now we got him ready to roll fully. So I don't think this is something he's going to have to deal with all year. I think it does, there is a harm on not being able to practice for the majority of training camp, as it seems like this has been at this point for Spoon, on top of his holdout. And so now you're definitely looking at this. I'm not saying I'm worried, but David, it is just a change of expectations. And he's also got not necessarily a clear pathway to getting out there and playing on the field. Not if Kobe Bryant's out there playing well, not if Mike Jackson's playing well, not if Trey Brown's playing well. He's already that rookie. Now he's got the injury. Then he's got a stacked position group in front of him as well. It's tough.
Yeah, it is going to be tough. But big picture, I'm not concerned at all.
Yeah. And unfortunately, Brendan, I know you put a video together of you're tired of the Jalen Carter stuff, but
yeah,
it's like Game of Thrones, man. Winter's coming. The Carter consternation is coming, and there's nothing you can do to stop it, man. Unfortunately, but I think he'll be at some point or another. Spoon's going to have some impact on this team. He's going to help this team. If it's not from game 1, somewhere along the lines, I think he slides in there and shows you why he was the 5th pick in this draft and gives you a good taste of it.
Yeah, he's too good to not.
Appreciate you, though. Thanks, David, for that donation. Snail with a $2 dono says, Aesop Winston Jr. for kick returns. Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, that might be one way we make this work. Like, they kept putting JSN at kick returns and punt returns, which made me very unhappy. I didn't like that very much. Who else? I mean, honestly, DJ Dallas is a pretty good kick returner. Like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, go with DJ. I don't think he's ever fumbled on a kick return. I think he's capable. He's not a guy who's going to house it, but he's capable of getting you to the 45-yard line if it's blocked up right. And I'm good with that at this point. Yeah, McIntosh looks like he might be taking reps away from Dallas. He might be your 3rd down back at this point with how he's looking early on in camp. So if that's the case, let's find a way to get Dallas some reps there. So, I don't know if I can keep Aesop Winston on the roster if I'm keeping 5 receivers. If that means I got to clip Bobo to make that happen. And people ask me about this, Brendan. I just cannot see this team holding on to 6 receivers.
I considered the possibility, but what are you giving up then? What are you giving up? Are you giving up a defensive back? That's not good. Maybe you give up an edge rusher and only have 4. That might be one thing you could do, I guess. Just have 4 edge rushers.
I mean, that's where you potentially could go with it. You could, but then, you are in a 3-4 defense that needs its edge rushers, at the forefront of it. I mean, you can't, here's what we know about it, Brendan. You can't clip it from the running back because you're 4 running back deep. So you can't pull from there. You're 3 tight end deep. You can't pull from there. You've got your lineman set to 9 on my account of it. When I look at it, I don't know how you can pull from there. And people are saying, well, Evan Brown's versatility, right? Well, you can 1 less because of Evan Brown. I just don't think that works. The number I've seen teams that end up doing that stuff, Brendan. I don't think Carroll would do it either, where you have a couple injuries on your line, and then you have to put a tight end to block it like tackle for a game. I've seen that happen, and you just don't want to be even presented with that as a possibility. So I have a hard time knowing where you could grab that from. I like the thought process, of keeping Aesop if they could do it, but I just don't see there being he'd have to really light it up this preseason with how good Bobo's looked. And I don't know if he'll quite be able to get there, but I do think they'll be able to sneak him on the practice squad.
I think pretty much any of these guys should be able to get on the practice squad, except maybe Bobo if he keeps looking this good.
Landers could get a look out there because of the fact that he had those base metrics that are so nice coming out.
But he's nowhere near ready to play wide receiver in the NFL. Like, he needs probably a year, maybe 2 on the practice squad. So, like, if you're saying you got to give him a 53-man roster spot, I don't know how many teams would be willing to do that.
Agreed. I mean, that's the rub on that one. Will there be a team at that point that's, say nothing of all of those receivers that are going to run onto the market at the final cuts? Is he going to look better to an active roster at that point than those other guys? I don't know. And I sure would like to keep him on that, but
yeah.
How about both Aesop and Landers? So I do think that Cade's going to have a bit. It feels like Cade's had a pretty quiet camp, and that's a guy that is kind of into me a make or break it kind of situation.
Yeah, he might make practice squad. You can have like 3 receivers on the practice squad. Like,
you could
totally do that.
Yeah, you could possibly carry that many. So they might do that, but it does suck Cade had that go down though, because you were maybe looking to see, okay, 3rd year now. Are you ready to kind of look? He's yet to really kind of have the impact I was hoping he, not impact, but he was a guy that I had some hope for coming out as an undrafted rookie free agent, and he's just been kind of quiet to me.
Yeah, that's fair.
Snail, thank you for that donation, man. I appreciate you. Blitz 2K5 has been a Hawks Nest member for 15 long months. Thank you for that. Blitz says, going to the Cowboys game Saturday and can't wait to get a good glimpse of the potential for our Hawks for this season. Ooh, going to Jerry's World. Come on in, Blitz. We're going to make you a Cowboy fan, all right? You come in a Seahawks fan, we're going to leave a Cowboy fan.
That's the right stadium to go to if you're on the road. Either that or I guess maybe the LA stadium, although that's a little too bougie even for me.
It's very bougie. It's very, very glitz and glamour. I keep thinking with Jerry World, I see some of the angles they got camera angle wise, and I'm like, man, there's got to be so many spots in that stadium where you can't see. That's why they got that stupid screen where you're seeing little dots on the field, and then you find yourself in a stadium staring at the screen the whole game.
Yeah.
Because then you go, what's the point? What am I doing here? But that's awesome, man. I hope you got some good tickets, and it's a fun stadium. Build what, $1 billion stadium, Jerry's World?
It was $1.2 billion, I think, when he built it. And then the LA stadium was 5, and that 1.2 doesn't even really seem that big anymore all of a sudden.
$5 billion for a stadium. They paid what it would cost to pay for and buy a whole football team. They paid for that for a stadium. Wow. That's LA. That's LA for you though, man. But appreciate you, Blitz, for that long time support of the channel. And man, have a good time out there at the Cowboys game. Hopefully they give you a good one. It is in Dallas, right? Am I off on this? We're playing this one at home?
No, it's I think it's in Dallas. I think
Okay.
it is in Dallas.
Sometimes I get that wrong, so I'll make sure I'm right. Eric Tams, thank you for the $10 donation. Appreciate you, Eric. He says, Devin Bush hype. I'm 30 minutes behind. Well, you're not 30 minutes behind in a heart. appreciate the $10 donation, Eric. And hey, I'm not a guy that heavy expectations for Devin, but seeing how he was winning in a variety of ways and jumping into the backfield for a tackle for loss, coming from one far side of the field all the way over to the other side of the field to snuff out the screen game, which has been sometimes problematic for our defenses, coming over and helping out Trey Brown when he can't seem to tackle a tight end in open space. And so Bush comes over there and picks his guy up where he not only makes the tackle, but, with some authority sends that guy out of bounds. I did in my video, Brendan, look at this hit. Now look at Cody Barton last year against the Lions with Hawkinson running up the sideline and trying to get Hawkinson out of bounds. This hit and the the little soft push crap that Barton was doing. So I just thought he showed up with that speed and quickness. The thing I've come to in my mind is maybe he's robbed. Brendan talked about this. The part we can't really know with this. Has he been robbed of that superior ability that made him a 10th overall pick in the first round? Linebackers don't go in the first round often. Linebackers don't go in the top 10 very, very much, Brendan. And I'll tell you this, a team that doesn't miss very often on certain positions, Steelers in their history don't miss a whole lot when it comes to linebackers, be it middle linebackers or outside linebackers. They tend to be pretty right in their evaluations and their scouting process of those guys. So we'll see if he can get back. I 4-4 Brennan at 235 and a 1-5 flat 10-yard split.
Yeah, no, he was one of the guys who was on my radar back when free agency started. He was like, I think there's an opportunity to get this guy for maybe $3.5 million. He's been rehabbing for years, slowly working his way back. Like there's something here. So I was very excited about Devin Bush. I'm aware that it is a flyer, but I think it's a flyer that makes a lot of sense to work out.
That's it. And it's a low cost, high reward situation for the Seahawks if he can tap back into that. There's a guy by the name of Thomas Davis who comes to mind for me with this, where I think he started out with the Rams and just always injured, tearing ACLs, tearing Achilles multiple times over, I think on like both legs. And then eventually got to Carolina and found his legs, went there with Luke Kuechly, and they formed a great tandem there for a few years. He made a couple of Pro Bowls. I just kind of go to that a little bit in my thought process with Devin, if he can kind of have that Thomas Davis type track that he did.
You can find examples of people who came back from stuff like that. You can find examples of people who didn't, of course.
That's where I say, yeah, it's hard. It's impossible for you or I to, know. But I'll say this, the plays he's winning on and how he's doing a lot of what he's doing in that game, it was speed, quickness, and athleticism that were raising their head as to how he was doing what he was doing. He was bouncy, he was springy, he was twitchy, which just leads me to be a little bit more hopeful that he can reclaim that once former glorious self.
Yeah.
Thank you though, Eric Tams, and let the Devin Bush hype continue, my man. Let's see if he can keep it up this upcoming Saturday. Snail, thank you for the $5. Appreciate you. Says, don't worry, guys. I won't complain we didn't take Carter at 5. But when Bijan Robinson wins Rookie of the Year, I'm going to tell you I told you so all off season.
I mean, we were both pretty big on Bijan, I think. I mean, taking him at 5, that would have been tough. But he was really good. And if we had done it, I don't think I would have been mad. I would have been like, but I wouldn't have been mad, That guy's good.
I'm on record, I think, and you can correct me, Brendan, if I'm wrong, of saying, I think at the time, and still continue to say that if we had gone with Bijan and taken him, I would not have been a person out there complaining about it. So I thought he was a generational talent at the running back position. I thought he's the best prospect of the running back position we've seen in probably at least 7 or 8 years, I think. And to me, that made it to where yeah, you can pick that guy at 5. That's the outlier. That's the anomaly. That's this isn't every other running back is like this guy. No one is like this guy. And you already see, if you watch some cut-ups of Atlanta with Bijan, and you hear what's coming out of Atlanta, they're already doing just what I said we could do with him, which is utilize him in slot, which is utilize him as basically your third receiver at times. And not just on a tiny little couple snaps a game, but very often you can go that way. And now you open the door to all the fly sweep stuff and being very deadly with that against teams who are like, oh my God, is he coming through on the fly sweep? It's one thing when you got a Tyler Lockett coming on a fly sweep. How about Bijan Robinson coming around that corner? And so I wouldn't be surprised if he wins it. I was on board with doing it, Snail. The value was there for him. That's why this guy was taking 3 picks after us at number 8 by the Falcons. And if he wasn't taken there, he might have been taken a pick or 2 after that. So
yeah, I mean, he's not going to win Rookie of the Year, though. There are too many quarterbacks who are going to start.
Yeah, I'll tell you, though, they didn't look great in their opening. Nobody's looking great outside of Dorian Thompson-Robinson in their first opening gate starts. A lot of them looked a little over their head.
All you have to do is be competent and play every game or almost every game, and they're going to give it to you. One of those guys will be.
I mean, yeah, maybe on that. We'll see. I mean, you definitely have as a quarterback a better chance to do it. And especially a team like, let's say, Bryce Young, who's on a Carolina Panther team that can be playoff worthy with what they built around him. So he could, gets the playoffs and then he gets it. So it's, maybe not, but I have seen running backs win it. And if you get over the 1,000-yard marker, you can get there. I think the thing that'll be hard for Bijan is that he's going to get enough touches because he does have Algiers there. You still have Cordell Patterson there. You still have, all that going on. Yeah. I'll pet you later. So I do think that's going to hold him back and impel him a little bit. But if he ends up getting a lot of carries, he gets 250 touches, he's winning Rookie of the Year. Mark my words on that. That's my bold take, Brendan.
Wish I could agree, but they're just going to give it to a quarterback. That's what they always do, isn't it?
Yeah, they may. I mean, they do. I'm trying to think of, did we have any rookie quarterbacks last year? I guess we didn't because there was no.
Yeah, that's why a quarterback didn't win it last year because there weren't any except for Kenny Pickett, who was not very good.
Who won the previous year?
Previous year? Okay. So previous year would have been the 2021 draft class. Was that Joe? No, Joe Burrow got hurt.
Yeah, right? That wouldn't have been that one.
Did it have been Trevor Lawrence?
I don't think so.
It was Jamar Chase and Micah Parsons.
So yeah, I mean, to your point, if you look at the last 5 years, 2 of them have been quarterbacks, 1 receiver, two receivers.
Yeah, whenever they can give it to a quarterback, it feels like they do, though. Like they gave it to Dak Prescott over Zeke Elliott, which I thought was pretty bad.
Yeah, that was definitely a case of Elliott should have been definitely winning that one. And it's a little bit of a mix as I look at it. I mean, they give it to their share of running backs in here. I mean, the running backs, if you look at it, running backs are actually probably more likely to be the ones, You got Eddie Lacy, 13, Odell, then Todd Gurley, 15, Dak, then Alvin Kamara, 2017, then Barkley, 2018, and then you got.
I think it's just one of those things where if they can give it to a quarterback, they will. So the fact that we have 3 quarterbacks who are going to start as rookies, I feel like it's just going to happen.
Just takes one, man. Just takes one to be good. That he will. To your point, he'll get it if he can do that. So we'll see how those guys look. It'll be interesting. All of them, everybody looked even Levis. Just nobody looked great in their first action necessarily. Nobody was Russell Wilson 2012 in their first action. Let me put it like that.
Yeah, and he didn't even win that year. He was Luck, RG3, Tannehill, Wilson. I think RG3 won.
RG3 won. Yeah.
Yeah. And also, I watched that preseason game. Bryce Young's going to have a really hard time behind that offensive line. Behind that offensive line, he's getting murdered every play. Yeah. So there's probably going to be some media narrative that like, oh, he's a warrior. He's out there getting pounded and he's sticking in there and finding a way to make plays.
Yeah, I that first hit he took to first snap and he just gets barrel rolled. And my thing with it, and I told people, was like, kid's got talent. The kid's going to be ahead of his years when it comes to processing on the football field and doing things that you normally see from vet quarterbacks. But his body is toddler size at best. And it's very thin and frail. And he can't take a lot of hits. And he's going to take a lot of hits at the NFL level because he can't see everything either. He's a little undersized. So he's going to want to hold that ball a little bit longer at times. And bam, that's going to cause you to get whacked like that at moments. And hopefully he holds up. They've got a good run blocking line there. So if they can just do like what Broncos are going to try to do with Russell, where we'll run a heavy run based stuff and then we'll just try to protect around that with them. You might be able to find some with the good defense they have, right? They have a really good defense, so they can kind of play that way if they want with him, but that's also not why you draft a quarterback that high, is to hopefully,
We'll
not
see
have
what happens.
to play that way. Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you though, Snail. Appreciate you though, brother. Devo Martzall, thank you for the $5. He says, hey guys, tell me Devin Bush playing with Bobby isn't going to help him give it his all. He's got to look up to him. Go Hawks.
I mean, the thing with Devin Bush when he was drafted is he was also one of the smallest inside linebackers ever. And Bobby was undersized when he came out. Bobby was one of those faster, smaller guys that people thought, hey, he's too small. He's not going to be able to excel in this league. So maybe there's got to be a little bit going on there, right?
Well, you'd have to think, because if you're coming out as just even a guy out of Michigan like Bush was at that size, like you're saying, you're looking for other linebackers like you that you can sort of comp yourself after to how do they win? How do they get off blocks? How do they get around blocks? Do they take blocks on? Do they dip around them? I think there's a lot you could take away from in studying the guys that are masters. And players always talk about studying these guys. And so I think that if you ask Bush, he'd probably tell you, when I was coming out, I did look at Bobby quite a bit and model after him. And yeah, there's no doubt about it. Bobby's reached a status of where when he opens his mouth, everyone in that locker room is going to listen. They're including the coaches, including the coaches. He holds a level of sway and what he's done that he's going to get that level of respect. And so, he certainly hopefully can help out Bush. And I think, we certainly saw Jordan take a step back last year versus what he maybe looked like with Bobby. I think even in just certain realms, he looked a little bit. That's the other thing with.
I think the big thing with Brooks is he's not a good play caller. He's got the green dot.
Yeah.
It
overwhelmed him.
Doesn't go well.
Yeah. He just seemed to be in too much. But that's my one thing with Bobby, is that Bobby might be a good teacher, but he wasn't able to bring really Brooks along that much further along these last few years. Brooks has kind of been what he was when he walked in the door for the most part. A good tackling, hitting guy really fast. The coverage stuff is still kind of there with him a bit. But we'll see. We'll see if that Devo that it can fit with Bobby here, and it can't hurt, man. Can't hurt having a guy like that out there. Bobby's going to know the play. He's going to be, whether it's Jordan or Devin too, he's going to be doing that thing where you're going to watch him pre-play, folks, and he'll be pointing and be like, right there. It's going right there, and he'll be right. He'll be right in his view of it. Appreciate you though, Devo. Thank you, man. Go Hawks. Fat Daddy Stacks another $5. Thank you, Fat Daddy Stacks. Says, one thing about Bush and Reed is that don't undervalue guys that are under contract with a team they're not happy with.
I remember seeing a little video clip last season, right before the season started, where Devin Bush was talking about how the Steelers hadn't picked up his 5th-year option, and the reporter asked him about it, and he was like, "Yeah, whatever." He seemed pretty done there, so there is something there for sure.
Yeah, I think Seahawks acknowledge this too a little bit with some of their signings at times. I know Uchenna Nwosu on a deal where you save a little bit of money, but there was as much to be as gained from the team standpoint at that point by sitting on him another year and just letting the contract ride maybe. Well, no, we want to let this guy have that certainty here that he's going to be in a good position and good and taken care of, and we want to keep him as part of this. And so I do think that the Hawks kind of roll with that as their kind of way of going about it too. So I think that there's been players. It struck me with Lamar Jackson last year with the injury he had. With the injury, when it's at the end of the year, it's an injury he could maybe come back from and help his team out as they get into the playoffs. But he shuts it down. No, I don't. I'm not getting paid. I don't. I think that there's a little bit there to that. And this is why I think the Seahawks also, Brendan, don't you agree? Probably don't use the franchise tag very often. Because this is also what you get with that, which is a player who's getting paid at his prime age on a 1-year deal with no guarantees outside of that 1-year contract. And, you can create some animosity with that.
Yeah, that would make some sense. There are a lot of reasons why a player may not enjoy playing for a team. Reed, I don't know. Do you get the sense that Reed was unhappy last year where he was in Green Bay? That I didn't hear very much about.
I hadn't heard anything about that with him on that. So I'm not sure. I have heard about them, I think, with Reed reference just being back in Seattle and the difference versus other organizations, and just them taking the care of the players and more of the behind the scenes stuff, of course.
Although LJ Collier didn't seem to like it here very much. He's talking now. I don't know if you heard.
Making some excuses. I guess he wasn't a scheme fit, Brendon. I don't remember you saying. How did you miss that one, Brendon? How did you miss that analysis? He was a bad scheme fit this whole time. You never once mentioned that for LJ Collier, and I'm calling you the Matt, brother. I'm calling you the Matt right here. You never blamed LJ Collier's failings on his scheme inadequacies. I mean, how did you miss that? How did you miss that?
Yeah. The funny thing was, the way he put it, it sounded more like he was talking like, "Oh, I don't like the weather in Seattle," which, I mean, join the club. But that better not be the reason why you were bad at football.
Yeah, exactly. And he didn't say too much. I'm probably blowing up more than he said. There was a casual thing said about maybe not being a scheme fit, which just made me laugh. It's like, which scheme? Was it the 4-3 or was it the 3-4, LJ? Which me wonders which of those you meant. Was it you as a defensive end or was it you as a 3-tech? We tried you everywhere. What are you talking about? As a scheme fit. There wasn't a spot that we didn't put you on that line. We probably gave you some 1-tech snaps last year at some point, I'm sure. They were trying everything they could to get something out of that guy. So,
He
but
played last year. We probably didn't do that, but I'm sure we tried it at some point in practice.
Yeah, no, I'm being facetious. We didn't do him at 1-tech, but he got plenty of chances, plenty of places to play. There's no excuses there with it. And, the Cardinals aren't going to get anything out of him either with this. And it's unfortunate. I'm not trying to hate on LJ. It's not his fault. Some guys just aren't quite good enough. It's, maybe they work really hard. Maybe they bust ass. Maybe they're in that weight room 24/7. Maybe they're thinking about football in their life all the time and they just can't quite get over that mark. And it's sad for those guys in that man. And at least he's getting another try there with Arizona. You imagine because Arizona has like a 13 sack year, just becomes dominant over there.
Yeah.
That would not be awesome, but it's not likely to happen. There's about a 0.00009% chance of that occurring. So
yeah.
But that was funny. I did see that quote coming from him. I thought that was pretty funny, LJ. Pretty funny. He's a funny guy. And yeah, the weather's, it is what it is. But I'll tell you that Arizona, you stay a year in that heat, you'll be out of that as well. Cockroaches everywhere down there. You walk outside at night, there's cockroaches running on everything. Yeah. No, thank you.
Yeah, no, I'll pass on that.
Yeah, you haven't lived until cockroaches run up your leg at 11 o'clock at night as you're trying to get into your apartment. Like, oh. All right, well, we've gotten the Viking games covered out here, Brendon, and we looked a little bit at some Seahawks news. I don't think we have anything really going, folks. As we talked about at the top, this is where you want to be, which is that you want things to be smooth sailing. The water's crystal clear, no break. Right? Just nice and gentle as she goes through training camp. No major injuries, just kind of rolling along. Everybody being productive, getting their work in as they do. So it's been good that it's this way at this moment. Let's take we're going to take a little peek here into this Cowboys game. We're going to get into a deeper dive on this on Thursday, of course, when we do the BNB show at 7 o'clock. We're doing on Thursday, or we're going to go 8?
I think it's just going to be 7. Because 8 is for Thursday night football when that starts.
Yeah.
And people are watching it. Nobody's going to be watching Thursday night preseason football. Like, I don't know what to,
Not to the third stringers.
I'm not worried about it.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll be back 7 o'clock at that point. We're going to do a big deeper dive here on this Cowboys game, but in just general terms, as we look at it with that 10,000 view look at this coming into this, what are you wanting to see now in this next preseason game is from a specific standpoint? We've got the first game. Is it just carrying more on to, hell, that was a hell of a good performance. You can just say as much as anything, just carry on the good performance in the first, do more of the same of that. Or is there something you didn't see in the first game you want to see more of?
I'd like to see the offensive line be a little bit better. If we play guys like Cross and Lucas, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like if we play all the backups, then it is what it is. I'd like to see a little more from the offensive line, I would say.
Do you buy what I'm saying with the Stone Forsythe thing with it? I don't mean to sound like a pessimist, and I was relatively on board with him being a guy you could take he's a backup tackle to me, so that's, I look at it kind of like my expectation level is low for you anyway as a backup tackle. Just come in there and hold on for dear life and get us through. That's NFL. You can only stack so strong a team. Am I short selling him a little bit and where I should be looking at him a little bit more of, he needs to be giving us more than that?
Forsythe, I'm just kind of out on him. I think he's just not good enough.
Yeah.
I'm out on him. Not good enough.
I as well. I think he's here for the rookie contract as the backup, but I think you're second that it's not super cheap having him here in that role. Then you're probably moving on to the next at that point. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I do think you're right. More, especially run blocking. Let's get some more holes open up in the run game, Brendon, right? Let's get a little bit more, some chunk yards down there with some of these backs on that.
Yeah.
Help them out a little bit, get some holes maybe cleaned up there. What about with Drew Lock in this game? Maybe a little bit less of the turnover-worthy throws. I didn't ask you where you stood on that from that. It was one part we didn't cover in this last game, but where do you stand on that? Was this a great game from you, Drew Lock? Was it a mixed bag? Was it?
I thought he played fine. I mean, he made one really bad throw, although that is the Drew Lock experience, right? He has one really, really bad throw. So,
Yeah. Well, and he's got the fumble that he had near the goal line. And then, theoretically that throw there to Jackson Smith where Jackson almost did the Odell Beckham move on that one catch. That was kind of an interceptable worthy throw. There's a safety over the top there lurking where if Jackson doesn't get a hand on that ball, it's sailing over the top right in the hands of the safety. Luckily Jackson did. And I don't want to count it like that, but that's, for me, one of the things that the headed for me is going to be him, playing a little bit of a cleaner game in this one as far as just having less of those kind of plays popping up.
Yeah, it's probably always just going to be part of his game, though. Let's be real.
There are those players. There are quarterbacks. Stafford's that way. Stafford will come out and he'll hit you for 275, 300 yards, but he's going to throw you a couple interceptable worthy passes throughout the course of the game. And whether you pick him off or not is often really, to me, I always said about Stafford, that's the difference of whether you're going to win the game or not a lot playing him, is if you can take advantage of those times he gives you the true opportunities. And they're going to be true opportunities. They're going to be like can we get a tip pass? He'll throw it directly to your guy, hit him right in the chest. And if he can pick it off, you can, flip the cards on those kind of games, in that way. What about defensively? More pressure-based looks, stay with kind of more of the four-man fronts, just keep it vanilla. It seemed like they stayed pretty vanilla with coverages, pretty vanilla.
I would like to see that get picked up a little bit here. I would like to see that get picked up just a little bit here. A little more aggressiveness, a little more blitzing, that kind of stuff. I would like to see that.
Just to play with some things, right? Try out some different things that you can see. Not to mention see what some of the younger guys that are maybe coming in as backups can do as blitzers. What do they bring from their skill set? If you do bring them into the game, do they have that in their cards to do? It would be kind of nice to see. I'd love to see that a little bit. Peter Go Hawks, thank you for the $5 donation. Says, I'm 20 minutes behind. Are we going to talk about Bell? This kid seemed to be in on every play, just smashing through one game. You guys think he's in?
No. No.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said on that, Peter. I think he was playing really well. I think he was probably kind of almost at times looking a little bit dominant as a pass rusher, but there wasn't necessarily good as a run defender. But the depth chart is so stacked here for this kid. Your best hope for him is to be able to sneak him into the practice squad. He would have to come out and really, really light it up through this preseason to be able to break his way into even the roster.
Yeah, good for him and all that, but he's got so much work to do. He's going to have to play like that every game for the rest of the preseason. And even then, I don't know if he would. Like, we've done this before. Remember Nick Reed? Remember Jason Williams? There's always a guy like this. And they can only go so far up.
Yeah, I agree. They can. If he's only going to be, if you look at him between the run game and the pass, if he's only going to be really, really good even as a pass rusher, then against the third stringers, that's then still a thing that becomes an impediment to him making the roster, because you go, well, and you're kind of a one-trick pony a little bit of what we can bring you out there to do maybe. And it's one game, so it's hard to make, in any of this to reach any kind of final conclusions. It was fun to watch what he did out there. He was really active. He was pretty quick from the looks of things, and he really used his hands really well out there. Guy was fighting his butt off every snap. Definitely, high motor kind of dude. But I just think on the depth chart wise, Peter, it's going to be just so hard. This team's built up a deep team, and that's makes it tough for some of these guys that are UDFAs. But I like him long term as a developmental prospect, practice squad. I would be very excited about him being over on that spot.
If he plays this way in this next preseason game and the next preseason game, maybe. But until then, it's not even really worth. It's not even really worth thinking about. Like, you look at the depth chart. I know we don't have a great defensive line, but there are too many guys that are clearly ahead of the pecking order, ahead of him in the pecking order.
Including you've already got your young guys that you've slotted to be your young guys on the line that are going to be your Cameron Youngs, your Mike Morris. These guys that are already on that line. You already got everybody kind of slotted in, so it's just tough in that respect to him to crack in, but. This is what we want, is to build up a strong UDFA crew that can roll and call upon somebody that can come in and, if he can only give you some pass rush impact off of the practice squad at some point this season, and you put him in that rotational point for a given game or two while you're waiting for an injury situation to get over, not too bad. And you got a long-term guy that could maybe develop and give you something. So it was an encouraging first step from Bell. But like Brendan says, we just got to see a little more with him because this was his first game, and
A lot more,
not just a little, but a lot. Being that he is an undrafted free agent kind of guy and already kind of fringy coming in. But it was a good first step, Peter. It was a good first step, and he was impressive in this game. One of the most impressive defenders, especially in the third unit. Concierge with Nolan. Nolan, thank you so much for the $10 donation, and appreciate the double donation on this stream today. It says, since the Cowboys are up next, and maybe this is for the next stream, I had eyes for Deuce Vaughn at draft time. We got McIntosh around later. They're both third down backs. Who won the draft? So I guess he's meaning this by who won between those two picks, taking Vaughn in the 6th or taking McIntosh in the 7th.
I didn't think, was Deuce Vaughn a 6th round pick? I thought he went way before that.
I can't remember exactly. I think he actually dropped a little bit. Let's see.
I mean, I do think Deuce Vaughn's probably a little bit of a better player than Kenny McIntosh. Not by much, but he probably is. But he went earlier, so...
Yeah, he was a 6th round pick.
Okay. That's probably a little bit better. I mean, like, they're both pretty good picks, I think. I think they're both pretty nice. But, I mean, Dallas probably got the better player. They did spend a slightly higher pick. I don't know. I think both teams are pretty happy with how that turned out.
I think we got to factor in, too, you're getting Jarek Reed in the 6th and then McIntosh in the 7th. If I'm taking, Deuce Vaughn in the 6th, which, if I'm actually being honest with you, at 212 in the 6th, where the Cowboys were picking, I think we were, maybe we were still ahead of them there where we could have taken Vaughn. I go with the Jarek Reed and his upside there at the safety position, and then McIntosh versus probably Deuce Vaughn, and whoever I'm taking in the 7th round is going to be not great probably at that point as far as other options go there. I mean, maybe there was a couple names rattling around there that were still kind of interesting at that time, but I don't know how much better McIntosh is really going to be than Deuce. I think Deuce is a better player. My Darren Sproles comp looked pretty good with him early on because he looks Darren Sproles-esque when he was running around out there in the first preseason game. But McIntosh might have something to bring to bear too here. He may have something to say about this as well when it's all said and done. They might be really both useful players. But we got to factor in that 6th round point as well. Who's going to be the 7th guy you then take in the 7th round? Because it is a difference of rounds in how you're picking and who you're getting. And Jarek Reed, especially after that first preseason game for me, Brendan, he's got me excited. I was really, for a guy coming from the Lobos, didn't have a, high level of competition. He was playing out there in New Mexico. I thought he came in and he was all over the place and willing to throw his body around. He had a couple tackles where he had one tackle where he threw himself into a guy that was probably outweighed him by a good, 40 pounds, a ball carrier, and he bounced off him, but he slowed him down well enough for the cavalry to arrive and help out and bring the guy down to the ground. But we'll have to see, man. Let's see what McIntosh looks like in live game, on that one. But Vaughn definitely, people that were laughing at him for looking for so small and like a little baby on the football field earlier on in camp. He showed you why he's got that Sproles build, man, where they can just cut on a dime, change on a dime. They're just hard to get your hands on. It's like the old Rocky Rooster thing where he's trying to chase the chicken in the pen, And if he can get the chicken, he can stop doing it. But the chicken's always getting away from him. So it's just like that with Vaughn.
Yeah. I mean, he's going to be fun. I'm excited to see him.
I am too. He does look like he's going to be a fun back to keep an eye on and see what he does. So I'm definitely pretty jacked up for that guy. But thank you, Nolan. I appreciate the donations on the channel tonight, as always. Well, anything that else as far as this Cowboy game from your standpoint you're looking for? I know we're going to do the deeper dive on this. We won't get into the more of the players and stuff like that, but I think we've mostly covered most of the stuff.
Yeah, I think that's all we got. I can't think of anything else.
Fantastic. Well, Brendan, I appreciate you as ever for doing this on your side of thing, coming on in here. We will be, I'll be dual casting it on my channel, but we will be operating from Brendan's channel here on this Thursday at 7:00. We're going to do more of a full preview of this Cowboy game, talk about some more of the players in this game, what we're hoping to maybe see, what we expect from the game, and maybe probably also have a little bit of a Seahawk news. One last final question I want to ask you as we finish up here, because I forgot to ask you about this today and we did want to bring it up, was if you've got the option at this point between making a trade, or making a big signing after the cut down date happens, or rolling the dice, right? Rolling the dice and waiting yourself towards the trade deadline as you look at this roster kind of initially where it stands right now, which would you lean towards finding as being probably the better place for the Seahawks team to operate as we go in the forward? They got money in the pocket, right? They got money in the pocket to spend if they want. They got draft picks. A little bit. I'm not saying a huge swing, but a swing.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a defensive lineman you could bring in if you're not seeing enough from guys like Miles Adams before the season starts. Like you could bring in Chris Wormley. Actually, he's a guy who's still out there for some reason. I don't know why. He's good. Matt Ioannidis is out there. Akeem Hicks is out there, as much as he might be a little washed up.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need a lot from a guy. But I'm not looking to take a big swing. I don't really want to make a big trade. I don't really want to make I don't know who a big signing would be at this point. Like if you brought in Clowney, he wouldn't want big money at this point, I don't think. Like
I wouldn't think so, no.
Or wouldn't expect big money. So I'm looking to add a little bit to the defensive line, and that's about it. I'm happy there. I'm not feeling the need to make some big trade. Maybe a little trade for a guy like Grover Stewart, you brought up a couple streams ago, and I would be okay with it.
So which would you'd prefer probably then seeing that'd be the value point for you would be around the cut down day, maybe to find the guy versus waiting to the trade deadline. Let's let it roll for the first 5 weeks, see where it's at.
Yeah. Well, I feel like there are already a decent chunk of defense. I think a lot of these guys just want to skip preseason and training camp. They don't want to. They want to show up for game day and that's it.
Yeah.
So I feel like you don't even need cut downs. There are still guys out there on the defensive line that can help you, that are better than Miles Adams and Mike Morris right now. Good. So the cut downs could help increase the pool.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it would increase it by that much.
I think that's fair. That's fair. I'm leaning a little bit more towards rolling the dice a bit and seeing where the team's at once you get to games, play through some games, and then see if you can jump at the trade deadline to find that depressed asset where you can make that kind of trade where you get a guy that teams just wants to offload him and you've got that extra third round pick of the Broncos burning a hole in your pocket along with the money in the front of the pocket in the wallet. And it's all ready to happen. I would kind of like to see that. It did bite us. It's not a great strategy all the time because we did have a couple of years ago where we had all that voidable money sitting on the books where we did not have a player available to us at the trade deadline. So you couldn't make a deal. But sometimes you do need partners. You do need guys that are in sell mode to make that stuff happen. But I find myself leaning in that direction just personally on that one a little bit, Brendon.
Yeah, and I mean, don't get me wrong. If we're really good at that point in the season when the trade deadline comes up or we're close to being really good, of course. It's your job as a GM to kick the tires on pretty much everything that's out there. Even if it doesn't necessarily make a ton of sense, you want to at least make phone calls. So 100%. I want to be in on that.
100%. You never know when you might be able to find yourself a nice prize like Marshawn Lynch for 2 fourth-round picks. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
You never know. You never know. Well, Brendon, thank you for coming on, man. I appreciate you for always jumping in here, and we're going to have a great season this upcoming year with our dual streams. If you're not, folks, get over to Seahawks Brendon Nelson's channel. That's the name of his channel. Just search it right there on YouTube. It's going to pop up quick. And get subbed up over to his side of things. We'll be doing these shows twice a week, all year long, going deep dive on this team. Thank you, man. You're awesome for coming on in here and doing this. Appreciate you, brother. And we'll be on air, I guess, in another couple of days on your side of it.
Right. I will see you in a couple of days. I'm excited to talk some more preseason football.
Preseason's almost and rounding a little bit closer to the corner to the regular season and what looks like to be a really exciting upcoming year. It's also kind of nice to see some of the Niner consternation going on at the same time. There's a little bit. It's bubbling over there in that respect. Thank you guys for watching. We'll be back in 48 hours on Brendon's side of the aisle. But until that time, I hope we don't have to remind you, but we're going to do it anyway. We got to let them know, Brendon. They're going to forget if we don't. We got to let them know. Don't you guys ever forget. We're back in 48. In that time, don't let it slip your mind. Keep it at the forefront because this is going to be hopefully a magical season for your Seattle Seahawks. So remember, always remember, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.